taking place in the channel, banging on about law and order, we're not afraid to do the absolute lot of it.
Yes, and if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we'll be saying it.
Make sure you're here 9:30 a.m. till 12 p.m. every single weekday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
On Mark Dolan tonight, we have a simple plan, which is to inform, stimulate and entertain in equal measure. It's all about getting your opinions on the national television airwaves. I love my viewer emails, mark@gbnews.uk. So do join me from 9 p.m. to midnight every Friday, Saturday and Sunday for big guests, big opinions and a big presenter. 6'5", don't you know? See you then on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
The cricket world is rocked by allegations of racism. J.K. Rowling, yet again, provokes the ire of activists. And pantomime season is upon us. We'll be discussing all this and more tonight in Free Speech Nation. We all know that culture warriors are not very good at forgiveness. This is why they like to trawl through old tweets and Facebook posts in the hope of finding something you've done that they can then hold against you. Now, this could be a misjudged joke, or an offensive Halloween costume, or an act of cultural appropriation. So look, I may as well get this over with. There is a photo of me in which I am clearly appropriating another culture, and I know someone's going to find it eventually, so here it is. Now, I obviously didn't realise how offensive this could be at the time. You know, I was probably drunk when I did this, right? So don't judge me. The thing is, people change, don't they? They make mistakes and then they grow up. But for some people, an apology just isn't enough. Do you remember when Kevin Hart was forced to step down from hosting the Oscars because of supposedly homophobic tweets he'd sent a decade ago, even though he was actually making jokes, and he'd apologised for them at the time? Or what about Ollie Robinson, the cricketer whose career lay in tatters after old tweets resurfaced from when he was an actual teenager? Speaking of cricket, this has been a very bad week for cricket. Cricket chiefs have apologised unreservedly following Azeem Rafiq's testimony about the racism he experienced at Yorkshire. Unfortunately, Rafiq then had to apologise himself for sending anti-Semitic messages to a fellow cricketer on Facebook in 2011. Apparently, cricket is so racist that even the players calling people racist turn out to be racist. In an unrelated incident, England cricketer Alex Hales had to apologise over accusations of appearing in blackface after old photos surfaced of him dressed up as Tupac Shakur in a party in 2009. and I thought cricket was meant to be boring. This is the most I've ever followed cricket in my life. It turns out that everyone who plays cricket is basically racist, and I'm now terrified that an old photo might resurface of me just playing cricket. That's probably enough to get me cancelled at this point. But as Azim Rafiq said, quote, "People are going to go through my whole life looking for things I've done. I admit I've made mistakes." And that's surely the point. Everyone has made mistakes. It's part of being human. If there is a racism problem in cricket, then by all means investigate that. But is it really helpful to dig up stupid things that people said many years ago and then condemn them for it now? I think we could all do a little more with focusing less on the past and more on the present. On Free Speech Nation today, I'm going to be talking cancel culture with the editor of Spiked Online, Tom Slater.
You go further down the pecking order, and you're talking about people like Brian Leach, who was someone who the Free Speech Union, I believe, have been involved with, who was a greeter at an Asda. And because he had shared on his Facebook page a Billy Connolly routine that was taking the mick out of religion in general, but Islam in particular, I believe, he lost his job over that. And this is the thing, is that we can, first of all, there's an example of cancel culture in the news basically every week.
Yeah.
The weight of examples doesn't seem to breach the sort of bad faith deflection argument. But at the same time, I think the important point that's worth stressing is that, in a way, its most corrosive impact is amongst the people you probably don't hear about.
You'll be hearing an exclusive clip from our conversation later in the programme. And Panto season returns with a bang this year, but should there be more woke? I'm going to be putting those questions to an actual dame and buttons here in the studio. It's not something I normally do, but I'm looking forward to it. My panel today are the fantastic comedians Leo Kearse and Paul Ricketts. Everyone. So let's go straight to our audience questions. The first one is from Brian. Where's Brian? Hello, Brian.
Yeah. Should victims ever have to repay compensation?
Should victims ever have to repay compensation? So, of course, this is related to what I was talking about, the cricketing scandal. Any thoughts on this? I'm going to come to you first, Paul. Do you have any thoughts on Azim Rafiq and whether people are now saying online, basically, he was compensated because of the racism he experienced at Yorkshire. Should he now have to pay some of that to the people who were the targets of his tweets that were surfaced many years ago? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, you know, the straightforward thing about this is if you're a victim, you're a victim. You can't really sort of... one sin doesn't outweigh another one. If I could use an example, if a man was knocked down by a bus that was driven by someone who was drunk...
Yep.
So the person who then knocked down this person shouldn't be allowed to get off with this because it turns out that the bloke he knocked down voted UKIP. You know, it's just... So this, you know, one sin doesn't outweigh another sin. You can't just trade them off like that.
What extreme position to say UKIP voters are sinful, as opposed to just politically dissident. That's interesting, though, because the two... Yeah, one thing doesn't necessarily relate to the other insofar as he could well have sent these anti-Semitic messages and tweets. That doesn't make it OK for someone then to be racist to him.
Yeah.
I mean, that, you know, this seems like a straightforward... Do you agree with that, Leo?
Well, I think the racism that was directed against him was, like, in the workplace, and it was repeated, and it was bullying, whereas he was anti-Semitic in a WhatsApp group. And WhatsApp groups should be sacrosanct. Anything that happens in a WhatsApp group, that's the last safe space we've got to be horrible people.
This is so totally unrealistic. I mean, look...
But not Facebook Messenger.
Well, Oh, Facebook Messenger? No, that's read by Mark Zuckerberg himself. WhatsApp groups are the Wild West. I'm in WhatsApp groups with ISIS.
Unfortunately, that is the truth.
It's absolutely not. I'm just reiterate that Leo is not a part of ISIS or an Islamic fundamentalist group. Listen, I think... But
they wouldn't have me.
No, they wouldn't, absolutely not. What I think WhatsApp messages generally, I end up reading them a lot because politicians... Why are politicians in WhatsApp groups? Because they always get leaked. They always get leaked. Anything you say in a WhatsApp message is going to... I'm even careful when I WhatsApp my mum. You know, I'm not going to tell... Because she might leak it.
Honestly,
you know?
I think leaking a WhatsApp group message, taking a screenshot from a WhatsApp group, that should be a crime. That's the equivalent of treason, but for that group.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that?
What, on WhatsApp groups?
No, or generally, do you think... Right, if you were in part of a WhatsApp group and someone said something that you really found objectionable, would you talk to that person about it, say, look, I've got a problem with that, or would you screenshot it and put it online and then try and shame that person?
Funny enough, I've done it on Facebook with someone...
Incredible.
but I only screenshot and save things.
Right.
And I don't show them to people. I show them to the person who said it.
Oh, OK.
So there was a particular comic who said something to me. Then she deleted it almost straight away. But I was quicker. I was quicker, and I was able to go, is this what you're looking for?
So, Paul, you're one of these people that always screenshots everything quickly.
No. It's only when it's like, well, that was so out of order, this needs to be... I've seen it's only 2 fingers away.
Yeah, exactly.
So you might as well screenshot it and then send it back, especially when they delete it.
Yeah.
When someone deletes something, you know they're in the wrong.
I think that's totally legitimate, because what you're doing is you're using their own words against them to make a point and to point out maybe their hypocrisy or whatever. But, like, it's slightly different, isn't it, if you screenshot something a friend said to you in private and say then you fall out with a friend and then you're like, now I want to shame that person, I want to hurt that person, so I'm going to put that stuff out there.
Yeah, I worry about people who do this. I mean, it's... I don't know. All of you, I take it, are on social media, and all the people watching. Yeah. And do we all have to go through every single thing we've ever said in the last 20 years and to check it? Depends what we're doing. I'm looking at certain people in the room. Some of them don't have to bother. But, you know, I mean, I'm quite lucky that I'm a wonderful human being.
Yeah, I was about to say, Paul, you never say anything wrong, or...
I say plenty wrong, but I'll stand by it.
Oh, OK, well, that's the difference. What about you? Have you ever had this happen to you, Leo, where someone...
Yeah, well, funnily enough, the same thing happened to me. Somebody, I hate it when they do this, they go through your tweets and, like, go back 10 years, they're like offence archaeologists peeling back the layers until they find the outline of a Roman fort that says something vaguely homophobic or whatever in 2011. But yeah, it happened to me. They went all the way back to that afternoon. It was literally the most recent thing I'd tweeted, and yeah, I got cancelled from a venue at the Perth Fringe in Australia because of it. So yeah, it caused me a great deal of harm. And
so you actually, can I just clarify this? So you had a show booked, and the show was cancelled off the back of one tweet. How many people had complained about this?
It was fun if it was a clip from Comedy Unleashed.
That, which, by the way, is a club that I run in London. So thanks. I bear no responsibility for this, by the way. Whatever you say on that platform is up to you. I'm not, if this is what this is about. So the show was then cancelled. Would you agree that the tweet that you'd sent was worthy of cancellation? In other words, was it, you know, too far?
No, it absolutely wasn't too far. If anything, I didn't go far enough.
OK.
And
you're quite an unrepentant person, aren't you?
So, what was it then?
Well, you know, you're asking now, but we have to be careful about what we say on television, because I'm sure even the mildest thing that Leo has to say is probably not televisual.
I'm sure it was... what sort of... Was it homophobic? Was it sexist?
It was perceived as transphobic. So I was talking about the difference in transitioning between men and women, because for women it's very easy. You just stop shaving. And then, you know, if you want to become a man, you know, take hormones, and people might be like, you know, I think that man's got breasts. But
so is that transphobic? We're going to find out, aren't we? When people start contacting the channel to say that was... Well, I mean...
But for a man, if I wanted to transition to being a woman, then it's a whole rigmarole. It's a lot of expense, I've got to have surgery, implants, you know, all the rest of it, get a whole new wardrobe of clothes. It's very difficult.
But this... OK, the context of this, I think, is clear, is that...
I could probably keep this shirt.
Right. Leo is a comedian, and Leo is obviously on Twitter making jokes, right? Now, this is clearly a point.
Yeah, but whenever somebody takes what a comedian said and gets offended by it on Twitter, they always take it as if it's just said at complete literal face value. There's no room for nuance or context or even the concept that maybe the comedian was joking.
Which is odd, because it's kind of in the job description. Have you ever had a joke of yours take completely at face value and people, or even people get very offended by something you've said?
Yes.
But so how do you react in that situation? Because I think different people react in different ways, don't they? Some people back down straight away. Some people stand by it.
Well, just get back to what Leo was saying. Oh, it's only a joke. I mean, my God, it's funny because it's true. That's one of the, you know, the maxims of comedy.
Yeah.
The truer it is, the funnier it is. So therefore, you do believe that, what you're saying. I almost said something else there. Just caught myself in time. You know, people get upset, and you have to take responsibility for it. And if it's a justifiable thing, I can think of examples. I can't tell you the stories, but it's basically about homophobia in the workplace. And I was working in this particular place and watched this poor bloke getting picked on. And someone came up to me at the end of the night and said, well, you shouldn't be doing that story. You're not homosexual.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, but I was working there, and it's a story that I saw, and it had an effect on me.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry that you're upset, and but it wasn't my intention to upset you. And I always think as comedians, there's a weird thing that seems to be going on, that no one takes responsibility for upsetting people.
So you think...
And what I call audience reaction.
Yeah.
I mean, if the audience decide that they don't like you, take responsibility for it, rather than go, well, they just don't understand, do they? But they do understand. But they're the audience.
If I saw you doing a routine that I thought might be homophobic, I would assume it's not, right? Because my default expectation of you is that you're not anti-gay, right? So therefore, I would assume maybe not that I've misunderstood it, but maybe I didn't quite pick up on the nuances of what you were trying to do there. So isn't it partly not fault, right? It's not the audience's fault, but isn't it partly about interpretation, not necessarily the intent of the comic? No, isn't it that the case?
Of course. I mean, yeah, but yes, of course, it's all part of interpretation. Anything you say, interpreted by an audience completely individually.
Yeah.
And so, therefore, there is an element of I can't control every single interpretation, and you shouldn't be thinking that way when you say stuff, because otherwise you'll never say anything.
That's right.
But, on the other hand, if a room decides they don't like you, in a normal comedy gig, you'd go, well, I'm not going to blame the room. I'm going to blame me because I'm the professional comic, and if the room hates me, it might be my problem.
Okay, no, I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think that, you know, if the whole audience turns against you and you like, maybe I did misjudge that a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's like, but if it's just like one person, I mean, I had complaints. I did a gig at the Stand, and I had one complaint afterwards that I was homophobic. And I'm like, how many men do I have to sleep with? But, you know, and it's like, I don't think that was a legitimate response. That was someone completely misunderstanding what I was doing. I mean, where do you lie? I mean, you always blame the audience, don't you, Leah?
Well, the thing is, I don't understand why people feel the need to like take quotes from comedians or take, you know, little snippets of material out of context. Because when we perform, we're performing in front of a jury. The audience are our jury, so we've got like, you know, hundreds of people there, and they're just, most people are nice people. If you say something that's genuinely homophobic or racist or transphobic, then they're not going to laugh because that's a horrible thing. So, you know, comedy doesn't need to be policed. It's already self-policing. We're doing material based on what the audience want to hear, and it's you know, if it's societally and you can see the difference in responses from you know, say an Islington gig to, you know, a gig in Norfolk or whatever.
Yeah.
So you know, and I see a gig with comedians who sneer at Brexit and get a standing ovation in Islington, and go to Norfolk, do the same thing, and yeah, they get lots of bottles of beer thrown at them with webbed fingers. But yeah. And yeah, I think comedy is something that's self-policing. We don't need to have, you know, these offence police watching everything.
It's interesting, isn't it?
But as soon as you stick it out in another medium and throw it out for your own, let's face it, self-aggrandising.
You mean social media, basically?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You put it out and go, well, this is me being brilliant, look at me. And then people you put it on a platform for people to look at, they're allowed to be, they're the audience now. They're allowed to
You've just expanded
say,
your audience.
I don't like it.
Yeah.
Just as much as you're totally right about the audience in the room totally decides. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
That's the great thing about comedy. No one can tell you if it went badly. You know if it went badly because you were there. You know, if the audience say nothing, it pretty much tells you, right?
I think it says a lot, doesn't it? We started out talking about cricket, and we made it about us, haven't we? We made it because that's what comedians do.
Well, yeah, I can also tell you I was born in Yorkshire, and I could have played for Yorkshire Cricket Club. Thank God I didn't. You know,
were you actually
yeah, I was born in Bradford.
And you were a cricketer? You played cricket?
Yeah, I was left arm sort of spinner.
I don't know what that means. I don't really understand.
Me neither, because I'm right-handed most of the time.
Well, let's move on to another question. We've got this from Steve. Where's Steve?
Are you?
Hello.
Hi, Andrew. Should companies stop spending big money on new Christmas adverts every year and just reuse the old ones?
Well, this is... OK, I know exactly what you're talking about. So this is whether companies should reuse old adverts. There's an advert from Robert Dias from last year, the Christmas advert. Oh, no, it's a few years ago now. Right? Every year at Christmas, it comes up again and goes viral. And it goes viral because everyone wants to talk about it. I think we can look at it. Have we got it? Let's watch it.
Hi, my name's Marcus. I work at Robert Dias and I'm gay. I like going out with my friends and playing volleyball. I also like showing our gay and straight customers a funky range of our Christmas gifts.
Hi, my name is James. I'm straight and I work at Robert Dias. I like sailing, baking and showing off all our Christmas kitchen gadgets to our gay and straight customers.
I'm straight and I love shopping at Robert Dyer's.
I'm gay and I love shopping at Robert Dyer's.
I'm bisexual and I always find something I love at Robert Dyer's.
Look at this Christmas tree. It's perfect for a gay person or a straight person.
This drill would work a treat in a straight person's home or a gay person's.
Robert Dyer's, where gays and straights can buy drills and much, much more.
Now, thing is, I normally hate like giving people free publicity, but I'm sorry, it's such a good advert. You've just got to let them do it. And like the thing about it is, there's a reason why it goes viral every year, because it's not just that it's a really funny advert, but it's also that people get really annoyed at it. People don't think they're joking, and they start retweeting saying, "Look at this, I'm so angry about this," and of course that just amplifies it, and it's sort of perfect. Have you seen that one before, Lou?
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, what that advert must have the best return on any advert.
Because it's cheap.
Oh, that
was made on like an iPhone.
That must have cost about £3.50 to make. And I'm not entirely sure what they spent the money on, to be honest. Yeah, it's incredible. Like it's almost like a deep-rooted like Starship Troopers style satire of woke culture and the constant. Because at the Microsoft conference, people come out and they announce, that like, I'm Leo, I'm a straight man, I'm 6'6", and I'm wearing a shirt with whatever on it. And it's bizarre how people have taken this identitarianism to the ultimate lengths.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Paul, do you think do you think the reason it's popular is because people still get annoyed by it?
I think when people talk about how much they hate identity, it's the biggest form of identity I've ever seen. When people go, well, why they're not talking about white men like me? Because most people who moan about identity have an identity which they're trying to put forward, which is fine. If you have an identity that you are quite proud of, please put it forward. But, everyone else has got the same option.
So let's go to Leo on that. So do you think that by criticising identity politics, you are in fact dabbling in identity politics? I think I've got your argument right there.
Thank you. I said it worse than that. You said.
I wasn't trying to be patronising. I'm just trying to... Leo needs a bit more help to understand stuff. That's
why you're the host.
What do you think? Have you ever had that level that you... What do you think?
I don't think you can call a desire to move away from identity politics an identity. That's like the most catch-22 judo lock.
You just described yourself and your shirt.
Which is not a good thing to do.
I was saying that's what they do at the Microsoft conference, and that's what this advert, that's the sort of attitude that this Robert Dyer's advert is.
Let me give you a specific example of this. So the recent John Lewis advert, which had the boy dressed in a dress, trashing the house, and that became kind of like a viral thing. But it became viral partly because it annoyed as many people as people who liked it. And in fact, it annoyed everyone. And maybe that is the strategy there. And maybe, because often identity politics, when it's played by companies, it doesn't get return dividends. People do just find it annoying. Yeah. But sometimes they talk about it more, and that's maybe the point.
And it's also, it can be done badly and it can be done well. Yeah. And that beautiful ad is done badly in just the right way.
Yeah, I think so.
That you sort of feel a sense of warmth about these people acting badly in Robert Dyer's.
Yeah.
And that tree is pretty good for straight and gay people.
I don't know. I thought that was a pretty gay tree, if I'm honest. There we go.
It's just the way you look at it, isn't
Maybe
it?
it's my perception. So, look, after the break, anyway, we're coming back to Free Speech Nation. I will be discussing the new IOC guidelines that are stating that transgender women should no longer be required to reduce their testosterone levels to compete in the women's sports category. That's a very controversial topic. I'm going to be discussing that with Peter Tatchell and Debbie Hayton. Join us in a moment.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking dry and cold for many. Let's take a look at the details. Skies will clear in the southwest and temperatures will fall. It will be cold tonight, and in the countryside temperatures could dip below freezing. Some showers will continue in the southeast and it will be windy around the coast. There will be clear spells between the showers. Wales will have a dry and clear evening with the frost forming tonight. Temperatures could fall as low as -2 degrees Celsius in parts of the countryside. Clear skies also extend into the Midlands with a chilly evening to come and temperatures expected to fall quickly. A strong wind will continue to blow along the northeast coast, which brings showers to northeast England. These will be blustery at times with some possible hail. Southern Scotland should stay mostly dry with clear skies, and it will turn rather chilly tonight with temperatures as low as -5 degrees Celsius in some spots. A dry and clear night in Northern Ireland too. It will be breezy around the coast, but turning cold inland.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. So this week, the International Olympic Committee, the IOC, issued new guidelines stating that transgender women should no longer be required to reduce their testosterone levels to compete in women's sports. The new framework replaces 2015 guidelines that recommended trans women suppress their testosterone levels for at least 12 months to compete. The IOC also concluded there should be no presumption that trans women have an automatic advantage. So with me to discuss this issue, I'm delighted to welcome LGBT campaigner Peter Tatchell and Debbie Hayton, a journalist, activist and physics teacher. Thank you both for joining me. So, Peter, I'm going to come to you first about this. What are your feelings about the IOC's statement this week?
Well, first let me say I am not trans, but I am a trans ally. I'm not speaking on behalf of the trans community. I'm speaking from my own perspective as a human rights campaigner. Mm-hmm. I want to see fairness for trans men and women. But I also want to see fairness for women in sport as well. And I think the IOC's decision to scrap the previous provision is partly because the science about the impact of testosterone levels is still not 100% clear. There still is some debate over that. I think also there was the very unfortunate example where two athletes from Namibia, two women athletes, biologically born women, were prohibited from running in the 400 metres at the Tokyo Olympics because they naturally had a high testosterone level. And that was very unfortunate because it's nothing beyond, nothing in their control.
Yes, these were just biological women who had...
Yeah. But to the wider issue, I think we do have to look at unfair advantage, but I would ask, why is there this focus on trans women? Because nearly all elite athletes have some kind of advantage. So if you have fast twitch muscle fibres, you can run and sprint much faster. If you've got extra large hearts and lungs, you can do better at endurance and strength events. Michael Phelps, the great Olympian swimmer, he had a exceptionally strong, enlarged lung capacity.
Yeah.
He also had very large feet, very long arms, which gave him a clear advantage in the pool. So I'm just saying, lots of athletes have advantages. Why are we singling out trans women in particular?
So this is a very interesting point, Debbie. I want to ask you about that because inevitably, when it comes to professional athletes, their innate advantages often mean that they win more medals, and that happens within the categories anyway. And you're a science teacher, so is Peter right to say that there isn't really scientific evidence for the advantage that trans athletes have?
Well, there is a big advantage that male people have over female people. This is well documented. And I do want to pick up on what Peter said actually about Peter apologised for not being trans. I think there's also another issue that there's 3 male people here talking about women's sports again.
Yeah.
Which I think is a little bit unfortunate that we are 3 males, 3 men if you like, talking about women's sports.
But you are a trans woman and you identify as trans, and so you would say, are you not a woman, therefore?
No.
Okay.
No. But I do think there is a way forward to this, which is genuinely inclusive. And it's something which the UK sports councils have mooted.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something which actually, I agree with what Peter was saying earlier in the week about, I think you'd said something about soccer, Peter, about having women competing in men's football. And that's not allowed under FA rules. Now, I do think there is something there about having an open category in which can be truly inclusive, where everybody can take part. But we do need to protect women's sports for biological females who haven't taken testosterone, who can compete on an equal playing field with other biological females who haven't taken testosterone.
I would just like to. I did invite some women onto the panel as well, and they could not make it. But this is an interesting point. Is that actually at the heart of this, Peter? Is it not a matter of identity, insofar as Debbie is a trans person who you say you're biologically male,
yes.
Right? But a lot of trans people will say, but a trans woman is a woman. So is it just that we are all using different definitions here? Is that what's going on?
I think that's true. I mean, there's definitely something called biological sex. That is irrefutable.
Yeah.
But there's also something called gender identity. And I would say that both are valid and neither should be advantaged unless there is some compelling reason otherwise.
Yes.
When we look at trans women in sport, there are some examples where clearly they are much bigger and stronger than the biological woman they're competing against.
Yeah.
But in many instances, there's not. So I look at the women's rugby football team.
Yes.
And a lot of the women there, they are hench. They are really well built, really strong and so on, much more so than other ordinary biological women. No one's saying that they have an unfair advantage, but clearly they physically and in strength.
But they're playing within a women's category, aren't they? So
yeah, but even so, compared to other people on the team, some of them are much bigger and stronger. So you know, I think there's a lot of nuance here, and we need to be careful about generalisation. I've got a friend a trans woman who plays in a women's football team. She's actually the second smallest person on the team.
Yes.
So she has got no physiological advantage. But she gets on well. The team accept her. She's a valued part of the team. The other women in the team who are biological women, they don't have a problem with her. So I think what I would say is, let's not generalise. Let's look at specifics. If there's going to be exclusions, it has to be based on individual athletes where there is some clear, very demonstrable, significant advantage.
OK, so you're saying that there should be some exclusions in certain circumstances. I mean, would you say, Debbie, is there a risk? Is there a risk that if you say we're effectively saying however you identify is going to be the criteria for whether or not you are able to compete? Is there a risk that this will disadvantage female athletes on a general principle?
Well, it will, and what concerns me about what Peter's saying is it's fine for trans women to compete as long as we don't win. So as long as we promise not to try our hardest and come second or third, then presumably it's OK.
Is that what you mean, Peter?
No. All I'm just saying is some trans women,
yes,
many trans women, don't fit the stereotype of some big, beefy, hunked-up guy.
So it does really, it strikes me hearing you both, it does come down to this idea of whether or not we should decide that gender identity or biological sex are the determining factors when it comes to sport. I think that's what this comes down to. And you know, do you have any thoughts on the idea of gender identity as a principle, as an idea?
Well, I don't think it exists, Andrew. You know, I really don't. I think some of us male people have got various psychological issues, which means we feel more comfortable presenting in the way that women present. But it doesn't mean that we're women.
And so this, you're talking about gender dysphoria, is that what you, is that what you mean? And so that, for you, is that is what being trans is? It is, you undertake certain medical procedures or as you say, presentational aspects because it makes you more comfortable and it makes you more happy?
Well, I would say that I'm a male person, and I'm quite happy to say about that, but I don't think you need to have gender... I don't think you need any of these qualities to be trans. To be trans is somebody who says they're trans. And in that way, I do believe in self-identification. If I say I'm trans, I'm trans.
So can I just ask, because I know a lot of people are confused about this issue, what exactly is meant by gender identity?
Well, it's supposed to be an internal quality that we've got inside our heads which determines whether we're a man or a woman. So if you have a female gender identity, you're a woman. If you have male gender identity, you're a man. If you haven't got a gender identity, you may be gender neutral or something else. But the problem with this concept is it's not been something that's been discovered. It was something that psychiatrists invented. And when we try and define it, we define it in terms of circular reasoning. So a gender identity is the gender with which you identify. Yes. Or it's also rests on sexist stereotypes, because that's the only link that you've got to what this thing actually is. It's somebody who prefers to present in the other way.
So I think this is one of the hardest questions which a lot of people struggle with, is because when people say, well, I identify as a woman, and the question comes about what does a woman mean? And then the response is a woman is someone who identifies as a woman. You see what Debbie's saying here is it becomes circular. Do you have any answers about that, Peter, what gender identity is?
Well, of course, what constitutes a woman involves a lot of different factors. You know, genes and chromosomes, wombs, reproductive capacity, hormones. There's a whole constellation of factors, not any one single one. So there may be biological women who are born without some of those traditional female attributes. But I hope no one would therefore say they're not women. When it comes to gender identity, the feeling that a person is a trans woman is so strong, so powerful, that I think it must have some psychological, emotional, probably brain structure roots. I know the evidence is not clear on that, but there have been 2 or 3 studies around the world which suggest that the brain structures of trans women are different from those of other women. And that is why they so strongly believe, or maybe the reason they so strongly believe that they are women. And I think it would be very, very wrong to penalise them for something innate like that.
I mean, my view on that has always been we take the liberal approach, which is that anyone should be allowed to identify however they please, use whatever language about themselves, but that they mustn't force other people to use language that they don't want to use about them. And that to me, is a liberal approach. The problem, clearly, with matters such as women's sports, is that you have a rights issue such as that hitting up against, potentially, another group's rights. And would you say that that might be the problem here? It's a collision of rights, I suppose.
Well, there is, and it's how we define a woman. You know, Peter's said there's different issues, but I would say it comes down to biological sex, and this is something in the vast majority of people, our sex is clear. There are intersex conditions, but diagnosable intersex conditions are assigned to one sex or another, so we can deal with that separately. Here's a transgender issue about can people who have all the attributes of being male, like me. I've fathered 3 children, so I am definitely male. If I suddenly decide that I identify as a woman, does that alone allow me to compete in women's sports? And I don't think it should.
There's something happening, though. I see often with activists saying that biological sex itself, to acknowledge this, is actually damaging or is actually hurtful in some way. But then, as Blair White is a trans writer from America saying, unless there is biological sex, there's no such thing as trans. So there's actually debates within the trans community about this. This isn't as settled as some of the more vocal activists seem to think. Do you think, Peter, or do you worry that because the debate has become quite toxic and that people are simply using different definitions or simply accusing others of hate or transphobia when maybe it's just a different view? Do you think that that is preventing us from making any progress here?
I think sometimes the allegation of hate is exaggerated or overused. What I want to see is a calm, polite, civil discussion between all of us. You know, I've been passionately in support of women's rights for over 50 years. I've supported every single women's rights campaign going in the last 5 decades. But I'm equally passionate about the rights of trans people as well. And I don't really see there's a conflict. To me, a biological woman and a trans woman, they have statistically the same kind of chance or probability. They'll be victims of prejudice, discrimination, harassment, domestic violence, hate crime, and even rape and sexual assault.
Yes.
So surely all women, including trans women, have a common interest in working together. You know, we may have differences and different points of view, but let's deal with them in a comradely, supportive way, and let's find a solution which protects both women's rights and trans rights.
So maybe it is about focusing on the common ground, actually, because, I mean, we can all agree that there are people out there who are hateful towards people because they are trans. There are people who are hateful towards people because they are women. And we can all agree that that's not acceptable. But what worries me is on either side, sometimes you hear the initial accusation is, this person must be a misogynist if they want people to be able to compete in sports on that footing. Or this person must be a transphobe. I mean, Stonewall repeatedly, to me, keeps saying, as far as I'm aware, keeps suggesting that people must be transphobic if they are critical of their views. That's not a good starting point, is it, Debbie?
No, it isn't, because we've got real issues here. We're looking at how to include people in sport. Let's put those things to one side about hate and transphobia, and let's have a look at this specific issue. I agree with Peter. The common ground which we can look at here is inclusion, including people, and trans people need to be included in sport. But with 3 males here, let's talk about men's sport, and let's look at men's sport and how can men include trans women in men's sport so it keeps our dignity. And we feel safe in that environment. Why not that? And why are we pushing the problem onto women to pick up?
That is a good question, Peter. Why does this debate always focus around women's sport? Is that not in of itself an acknowledgement that there's more of a risk to women's sports and that there is essentially a physical advantage to male-bodied people? Is that not the case?
Well, I think trans athletes, women trans athletes, feel so passionate that they are women, they want to compete with other women. And they don't want to compete with other men because they don't identify as men or with men's sport. But, you know, maybe there are other solutions, but it has to be on the basis of fairness. It has to be on the basis that no one has a particular demonstrable, significant advantage. And if we have that sort of principle in mind, I think we can find a solution.
Well, this has been a fascinating discussion. I would urge everyone to check out some of Debbie's articles on The Spectator. She writes beautifully about this topic. And also there's a documentary about Peter Tatchell on Netflix at the moment called Hating Peter Tatchell, which is a fantastic piece of work, and I really, really would... It's not a hit piece, by the way. It's actually a very interesting overview of his life and work, so do check that out as well. Up next on Free Speech Nation, we'll be playing devil's advocate when our panellists will be arguing for and against the coronavirus. Yeah, you don't want to miss that one. See you after the break.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back. So later in the show, I'm going to be turning agony uncle with the help of my beautiful panel, Paul and Leo, to help our audience with their personal problems. That's going to go really well. You can email your problems to us at gbnews at gbviews@gbnews.uk. So if you want us to have a go at sorting your life out, just drop us a line. It will work, I promise you. Now, this part of the show is called Devil's Advocate. This is where our panellists attempt to juggle a few hot potatoes of the day. And this week, our big question is coronavirus. So we're going to argue for and against the coronavirus. This is something you don't see on other TV channels, do you? But let's try this. So first up, we've got Leo Kearse, who's going to be claiming that coronavirus has had a positive impact.
I think coronavirus is much maligned and the issues are overblown. I mean, in Scotland, the average age of coronavirus victims is actually older than the average life expectancy. That means that people are living longer in Scotland if they get coronavirus. Like in Scotland, coronavirus isn't a disease, it's an antioxidant. Like the Scottish diet is so bad, you can actually introduce a bat virus into it. And Scottish bodies just go, what is this? Is this fibre? Honestly, some people in Glasgow are making it into their 30s. It's never been seen before. Make it to 40, you get a telegram from the Queen in Glasgow. When I say the Queen, it's Susan Boyle, but same thing. But yeah, and I think coronavirus, it came in. It doesn't affect young people. It only affects older people. It's like a reverse chlamydia. It takes out the frail and the vulnerable in society. I thought that was a Tory policy. But for some reason, our supposedly Tory government is trying to stop it. I think this is ridiculous. They've completely abandoned all Tory values. I think the next leader of the Tory party should be coronavirus. And the lockdown that they brought through was ridiculous and unneeded. You could see there was a pause. At the start of the Tory party were like, no, we're going to let it run its course. We're going to have herd immunity. And then there was a pause. And you could hear somebody come in and describe to them how much money they could make from lockdown. And then they did. They made so much money. Owen Patterson with his Randox. Randox testing. There's also the no-compete PPE contracts. So they've siphoned off hundreds of millions of taxpayers' money, and it's going to their cronies, and they're getting backhanders. And I think that's the real reason. Like lockdown was none of the stuff in it made sense. Like it was so easily avoidable as well. Like face masks. I don't know if you wore face masks. I didn't wear a face mask because I'm exempt. Because if you say you're exempt, you don't have to wear a face mask. It's amazing. What a system. You know what I mean? Like, I wish everything was like that. Like, can I see your driver's licence? I'm exempt. Why aren't you wearing any trousers? I'm exempt. Well, can you move away from the school? But yeah, no, I actually got stopped at Euston Station by a policeman who said, where's your face mask? Why aren't you wearing a face mask? And I said, I'm exempt. But I thought, it's a policeman, I better give a reason. So I said, I'm exempt because masks give me anxiety. Because anxiety is a thing that's got to be eliminated now for some reason. It used to be a valid emotion. It was useful to feel. It might stop you jumping into the sea with sharks or doing a TikTok video about your gender pronouns, you know? Oh, man, I get emails from people with, like, you know, my name's Steve, my pronouns are he and him. It's like, what pronouns do you think I was going to use for you, Steve? You're called Steve. There's a little picture of you. You've got a beard. You look like if I asked a child to draw a man, they'd draw you, Steve. I don't know who you're trying. Anyway, I'm getting away from the point. This policeman was like, excuse me, sir, where's your face mask? And I was like, I'm exempt, masking me anxiety. And he was like, well, where's your lanyard saying that? I was like, lanyards give me anxiety as well. So yeah, to sum up, coronavirus is fantastic. Let's just let it do its thing.
Thank you, Leo Kearse, everyone. Never thought I'd hear that phrase. Coronavirus is fantastic. Let it do its thing. OK, fine. We're going to go now for an opposing view, which I think is much needed. This is from Paul Ricketts, everyone.
So one of the easiest things in comedy to do is to be cruel. Cruelty is good in comedy. But when it's misplaced cruelty, I find myself really disgusted by the person who can perpetrate such a lie upon the audience. And I'm going to point a finger at you, Leo. Of course, yes. Coronavirus. It kills the elderly, the unfit. These are the people who are your fans. These are the people who are the fans of this station. These are the people who are my core audience. We don't need you people to die. You've got to stay alive and complete living your unfulfilled, miserable lives. Without you, we're nothing. Nothing. This station is nothing. How dare you? I mean, the very fact that you think, I want the old and the unfit. Look at these people. Look at that guy. He's never seen a gym in years. And he loves you.
I want to buy a house. What? I need half of London to die so I can afford a house.
You've had your time, mate.
Yeah,
You've had your time.
Leo, you can't step in on Paul's speech.
Yeah. No, I'm saying another thing to you. The very fact that if only the old and the unfit die, is this some way that you think you're going to be slightly better looking? That you think as long as you need people like them to stay alive to make you look better. That's what you need. And the other thing, that the fact that we're here doing this because of the vaccine, pretty much, and you want the coronavirus to run about wild so that we can't do our jobs anymore. Are you mad? What's the matter with you? Do you want to keep doing Zoom gigs for the rest of your life? I've done Zoom gigs. They're terrible. Good thing about it, of course, is that you get to see yourself when you perform. I never saw myself perform live before. This is the second time. And, it's weird. I mean, I've got to be honest. When I see myself performing live, I'm beguiled by my own beauty. I didn't realise how lucky you people are. And the other weird thing is when you do Zoom comedy gigs is that you actually get to see the audience, but in their own homes. And let's face it, some of you live in pretty bad homes. I've got to be honest. It's hard to do comedy when you're looking at your laptop monitor and you're looking at something that seems like an outtake from Benefit Street or a Mike Leigh movie. And, look, you've come out here tonight because the vaccination has taken place and now we can gather again. So you're here, sir. You put an effort in. You've got trousers on, hopefully underpants, and this lovely lady next to you. You've probably got a few dabs of perfume behind each ear so you can go home with something better than what you came in with. That's what happens when you haven't got a virus rampaging around. And I actually think, and this is a contentious argument, I actually think there will be a moment in the future when we'll be nostalgic for the lockdowns. There'll be some grandkid talking to her granddad saying, "Granddad, what did you do during the great lockdown?" "Oh, it was a great time, son. It was a great time. Nobody worked, no kids went to school. Fantastic times. Our hands were washed constantly. Our genitals never had it so good." You see, I remember a time, funny enough, first lockdown, and I was trying to, the other thing, also, I don't want to be forced to take exercise, and you're saying that only the young and fit will survive, so therefore you're saying that we should go to the gym. Shame on you.
Right, last point.
Last point.
Thank you.
Last point. There was a moment when with Clap for Carers, when you actually could say there was a sense of connection within the whole country. They were all doing something at the same time, and there was some sort of unified thing that actually bound us together. And I was actually jogging at that time, running through the streets, saw people come out to their windows, banging their pots and pans, clapping for carers. And because I'm a comic and selfish, all I could think of was they're doing this for me. And I thought, this is what it's like if you're leading the London Marathon, right? I thought it was like that. And then some bloke saw me running as I was looking up at them and shouted out, "Oh, look, it's Mo Farah's dad." And I think that's unreasonably. Apart from that, I did like the pandemic. The pandemic's no, I don't. I hate the pandemic. I forgot what I was saying.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I'm going to have to stop you there, but Paul Ricketts there. probably didn't realise that what I do at the end of these is I get the audience to vote on who they preferred, but he's just slagged you all off. So, I mean, I don't know whether that's going to work. But
I loved them. He hates them. He wants them to die.
Well, what we'll do, actually, instead of that, we're going to go straight to a break because we're running short on time. So coming up on Free Speech Nation, we're going to be seeing an exclusive clip from my podcast with the editor of Spiked Online, Tom Slater. See you in a couple of minutes.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead now to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking fine and sunny for most, but skies will be cloudy in northern Scotland. Let's take a look at the details. It'll be a frosty start in southwest England with a few mist and fog patches. The rest of the day will be sunny and chilly, with a high of around 9 degrees Celsius for most. It should be a bright start for most in the southeast too. It'll feel chilly, but most places should be frost-free to start the day. Rather cold over Wales, with some places starting the day below freezing, so you might want to wrap up warm. It'll also be quite a crisp start to the day in northwest England, with a frost for most, but also plenty of sunshine. Any mist or fog patches should quickly clear away. Temperatures should generally be above freezing across the northeast on Monday morning, but it will still feel quite chilly. You could catch the odd shower first thing near the coast. There's going to be a biting chill across parts of southern Scotland in the morning, as temperatures could be as low as -5 degrees Celsius. You may have to scrape your car if you're heading out early in the morning. Also, a rather cold start in Northern Ireland with plenty of sunshine and a crisp frost to start the day. The sunny, dry and chilly weather will continue on Monday, with just a few showers in the east. And that's how the weather's shaping up during tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. So on my upcoming podcast episode, I'm joined by the editor of Spiked Online, Tom Slater. We talked about how what they call woke culture has infiltrated big business and even the current government.
I think what they recognise, and it's an unfortunate thing, is that for whatever reason, this ideology has gained the moral high ground on basically social and cultural issues.
Yeah.
And so you see institutions, even a Tory government, a Tory party, the capitalist class and the corporate set, who have wrapped their arms around this agenda in a very meaningful way in recent years, it becomes a form of sort of legitimacy and mission for them. Now, obviously, if you take the example of the Tory party, that doesn't win them many supporters in,
it's not popular.
But I suppose it doesn't win them support even amongst the people that they seem to want to be currying favour with, if you see what I mean, because they'll just think of them as far-right nutcases anyway. Such is the politics of it. But I think what they kind of recognise is that that's how you cosy up to the cultural elite, if you see what I mean. But as you say, it completely puts off voters.
Well, that's what I
every
mean.
time these things are put to an electoral test, it fails completely.
So that's what's confusing about it, is that yes, you can cozy up to the managerial class and the capitalist class and the corporate class, and then but if you're going to do it in this way, you won't win elections down the line. I know that the Tories are very much in control at the moment, but the more they do this, the less isn't just really they haven't really got an opposition. So if there was an effective opposition, this sort of stuff would actually cause real problems for them, wouldn't it?
No, it would. But again, where is that going to come from? I mean, on all of the sorts of issues, you realise that there's just no opposition really to be had. And as we say, I think it just speaks to how entrenched even this Tory party is in those kinds of elite ideas, really. And I think it just reminds us that they are elite ideas, even though they like to pose as very kind of anti-elite and very radical.
Yeah.
They find themselves to fit very neatly into the agenda of a lot of people they claim to be against, which I think is interesting.
Do you think this has been imported from the US, this culture war? I mean, you've done tours in America, haven't you? Free speech tours through Spiked around university campuses. So you've seen sort of directly, what are the major differences that you saw from doing that?
I mean, it does fit, this is not an original point, but it does feel like we're downstream from the US in a lot of these things. I mean, this was a few years ago now, and obviously free speech on university campuses was increasingly a thing. But I remember we went and we did this unsafe space tour of campuses, and we were holding one event at Rutgers University in New Jersey, and it was all about, it was actually about Black Lives Matter, effectively, the earlier iteration of it, and all of the discussions around identity politics. So we had a kind of panel of liberals, some libertarians, as well as a conservative as well, who were all basically of the view that identity politics was essentially the new racial politics. So it was the thing that was dividing up people. So we're having a discussion about this. Now, even to hold this thing, they insisted on having, I think, a 10-strong police presence. There were bag checks on the way in, at which they took 2 megaphones off of people. The whole event completely descended into absolute bedlam. People were standing up chanting Black Lives Matter while people from the panel were saying, do you think we disagree with that, and all this kind of stuff. It was actually a lot of fun, I should add, because it was just such a circus. I actually really quite enjoyed it. And we managed to pull the event back. But this is for a primarily British magazine. None of them had any idea who we were. They didn't really even know any of the panellists, as far as I could tell from the conversations I had with protesters before and afterwards. Just because we were daring to ask the question about whether or not this identity politics thing was a good thing. And that a few years ago was not necessarily as present on campuses as we're seeing at the moment, that kind of slightly neo-Maoist sort of aspect, but it's definitely come back now. So it does feel like we are downstream from America in a lot of these issues, and that's definitely a bad thing.
So this comes back to what you were saying about the need to build other institutions. I mean, we know we've got the University of Austin, isn't it, that's being established. There's Ralston College in Savannah. So there are people who are building places where free speech, free inquiry, the pursuit of truth and knowledge, all of these things can potentially flourish. The problem I see with all of that is that those will be stigmatised by the media and various and activists. So that if you were to graduate from one of those universities, you might find it hard getting a job. Is that a fair point?
Well, it's certainly going to take some time, isn't it? Because I think the problem is not only is academia completely lost all of this stuff, but so is the corporate world. And we talk about, Britain being downstream from America. I think a lot of this was always downstream from the universities anyway. I'm sure you encountered this many times over the years when talking about issues of free speech or identity politics, because so much that used to happen in the kind of theatre of the university campus. People would say, what are you getting so upset about? Students have always been a bit over the top. This isn't the real world, they'll get over it. What we've really seen is that those ideas have now completely kind of permeated throughout the upper echelons of society from where they began there. So in a way, it's really important that there is this challenge to this complete dominance of woke thinking within the universities. But as you say, it's going to take a long time for that to conquer it elsewhere in society, because it's just everywhere.
Well, that's it. I mean, it isn't just a question of universities now. It is people's everyday life, their work environments, their HR departments, etc. What do you think about this notion? I mean, I think I did want to ask you about cancel culture and the idea of cancel culture, because again and again, I keep hearing cancel culture is a right-wing myth. No one has ever been cancelled. This isn't a real thing. How would you? I mean, you've written a lot about this subject. How do you counter that view?
Well, you could go horse listing the examples, couldn't you?
Of course,
which I think is important, and we could spend our time on that. But I think the way I would counter it is I think that that argument is always made entirely in bad faith. And you'll notice this because they will focus on examples of people who haven't really been cancelled. So they'll talk endlessly about J.K. Rowling. They say, everyone says J.K. Rowling is a victim of cancel culture. She's, still one of the richest women in publishing and cultural life, and she has not lost a job necessarily over this. Now there were some skirmishes, at a publisher which was running her new kids book, The Ichabod, where people were threatening to down tools. But of course, in general, yes, this hasn't really necessarily happened. She's been demonised, certainly. She's probably lost some friends over it. She's probably lost some opportunities, potentially. But it's not really going to touch her. But the thing is, the list does not begin and end with J.K. Rowling. There are so many people. I mean, even if you just take a few steps down, Gillian Phillip, who's an author, who was dropped by her publisher for tweeting her support for J.K. Rowling. You go further down the pecking order, and you're talking about people like Brian Leach, who was someone who the Free Speech Union, I believe, have been involved with, who was a greeter at an Asda. And because he had shared on his Facebook page a Billy Connolly routine that was taking the mick out of religion in general, but Islam in particular, I believe, he lost his job over that. And this is the thing, is that we can, first of all, there's an example of cancel culture in the news basically every week. The weight of examples doesn't seem to breach the sort of bad faith deflection argument. But at the same time, I think the important point that's worth stressing is that, in a way, its most corrosive impact is amongst the people you probably don't hear about, because I hear from them all the time.
So this idea that cancel culture is a myth is sort of predicated on the idea that there are certain things that are beyond the pale, and therefore these people are just suffering the consequences for being vile bigots. But as you've pointed out, the things that they've supposedly done wrong aren't actually examples of vile bigotry in 9 times out of 10. So then how can you deal with this? I mean, I don't know how you could persuade people that it is a real thing, it's actually happening. Innocent people are losing their jobs, having their reputations trashed. And the more examples you layer on, because there are so many, as you say, the more impervious they seem to be to that. How can we, it's like they're constructing a pseudo-reality. And in which case, haven't we reached the point where debating with those people has become kind of impossible?
It has, but I'll come back to that point about it's always worth it purely just to completely dismantle their nonsense. Because again, on the cancel culture issue, the bad faith of that discussion. And one thing that I think is always useful, because a lot of the time we are talking about people who like to think of themselves on the left here. What cancel culture effectively is empowering bosses to sack people because of their privately often held and expressed opinions. It's a campaign for bosses' rights. Occasionally, people say this quite explicitly. So around one of the recent cancellations in recent years, Billy Bragg said that he believes that an employer does have a right to sack someone over this, alleged left-wing, stalwart.
Do you remember what the specific opinion was in that case?
If I remember correctly, it was gender critical. I can't remember the specific case, whether it was Maya Forstater or Gillian Phillip or someone like this. And it was, I think it might have been Gillian Phillip incidentally, but I'd have to check. But that really was, it crystallised. Again, you saw this little slip take place. So I think that's, whether or not they'll listen to it is another thing. I don't think they will. But what they're basically advocating for is for people to be able to lose their livelihoods and for their bosses to be empowered to basically set the parameters of what it is that they're allowed to say and think, even outside of work. And yet they dress this up as a really progressive, wonderful thing. It's absolutely crazy. But you have the argument not really for them, but for everyone else. And not just to try and win people over, but also to let people know that they're not alone in thinking all of this is crazy and quite sinister.
And you can listen to my whole conversation with Tom Slater. It's on my podcast, Free Speech Nation, the podcast. And that goes live right at the end of the show. That is at 9 p.m. if you're a new viewer. It is 8 o'clock. You are just watching Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. You will all have seen the famous picture of Nikolai Yuzhov with Joseph Stalin at the Moscow Canal. So Yuzhov was a secret police official who carried out interrogations and ordered the executions of many of Stalin's enemies. But then he fell out of favour, and then suddenly, as if by magic, the picture looked like this. Now, people are always having a go at Stalin, aren't they? But look, this was before Photoshop, right? That's actually quite impressive. But this kind of revisionist activity is a common feature of all authoritarian regimes, and that's why some of us get a bit nervous when we see activists trying to topple historical monuments or rename streets and landmarks or remove books from library shelves or, as in the case of Dr. Seuss, prevent them from being published altogether. And we're seeing signs that many activists would like to see the same thing happen to J.K. Rowling. Now, you're going to remember last year there was a hashtag trending on Twitter, RIP J.K. Rowling. This was on social media, and this was presumably the same people who were burning copies of her books and posting the images online. So here's a quick tip for activists. If you really want people to think you're on the right side of history, burning books might not be the best look. And there are signs that some figures in authority are starting to become infected with the same hysteria. So this week, it was announced that HBO were going to be broadcasting a Harry Potter 20-year anniversary special. And all of the key figures are going to be involved, all the actors, directors and so forth. J.K. Rowling will be omitted. Now, I would argue that Rowling was quite a key figure in the Harry Potter story. This would be a bit like producing a documentary on the theory of relativity and forgetting to mention Albert Einstein. That said, some Twitter users have tried to downplay her role. So here's one example. This one Twitter user said, "Has it occurred to anyone that J.K. Rowling owes the success of the Harry Potter film franchise to Emma Watson, Rupert Grint and Daniel Radcliffe? People always seem to assume the debt runs in the opposite direction." Well, I wonder about that. I mean, are they really saying the key to the success of these films? Is it really that moviegoers generally don't care about exciting storytelling or thoughtful characterisation, but they're more interested in watching a few members of the public who were never particularly good at acting, but just happened to be plucked from obscurity as children and propelled into stardom? Don't groan that, we all know it's true. So toxic is J.K. Rowling's name that last year the Weald Community School in West Sussex dropped it from one of their houses, and it's happened again this week, with Holy Trinity Church of England Primary School in Richmond replacing J.K. Rowling's name as one of their houses with Marcus Rashford. Nothing wrong with naming a house after Marcus Rashford, but erasing the name of the most successful living children's authors in order to do so doesn't strike me as fair. And in all of this, it is worth reminding ourselves that J.K. Rowling has never actually said anything transphobic or hateful. That's a myth, perpetuated by activists and media commentators who are less interested in the truth and more interested in advancing their own agenda. And J.K. Rowling has become the folk devil for these culture warriors. I assume eventually they'll just remove Rowling's name from the Harry Potter books and just say that Marcus Rashford wrote them all. Holy Trinity School have also dropped the house name of Winston Churchill, presumably for his shocking views on trans people. It has been a bad week for Mr. Churchill all round, because the Imperial War Museum were forced to apologise because they ended their Remembrance Sunday silence with an anti-Churchill rap. I mean, that's one way to break a silence, I suppose. I can't help wondering what was going on in those meetings at the Imperial War Museum. I mean, someone will have been running through the schedule, right? It's Remembrance Sunday, we'll have the 2-minute silence, then we'll play the last post on the bugle, and then we'll get a bunch of teenagers to do a rap about how Churchill was no better than Hitler. Now, by all means, let's have a conversation about Churchill's life and legacy. But is this really the best way to do it? Now, the thing is, we're clearly not in Stalin territory just yet. No one is saying that we should never speak the name of Churchill or Rowling again. But there are better ways to engage with the complexities of history than these kinds of sledgehammer tactics. And who knows who the next target will be? We've seen activists going after Mahatma Gandhi, Enid Blyton, John Wayne. I mean, are they really surprised that people born over 100 years ago don't meet the standards of 21st century intersectionalists? And if these activists really think that they won't be judged harshly by future generations, that just goes to show how little they know about history. My panel today, with me till 9 p.m, we've got Leo and Paul, everyone. I want to come straight back into the audience. We've got a question from Felicia. Felicia, am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah, that's right.
Fantastic.
Are the French more woke than the British?
Are the French more woke than the British? OK, so I know what this episode, there has been there's a dictionary in France called Le Petit Robert. I can't pronounce it, but I think it's that. And they've been accused of wokeism because they've decided to include the gender-neutral pronoun into the November digital edition, and that's going to go into the print edition next year, I believe. And the reason why people are criticising them is not that gender-neutral pronouns don't exist, but that no one uses them in France. It's a very kind of, it's something that's just been sort of imposed. And of course, dictionaries traditionally have always been about recording common usage. But this is an example of the dictionary company saying, well, these are the words we think you should be using. That's kind of a step. That's a different thing, isn't it, Leo? What do you think?
Yeah, and I think for French, I mean, French has always had that that strict sort of masculine and feminine. When you say la and le, whether it depends.
Oh, that's why I failed my GCSE.
Yeah, yeah. Whereas in the UK, we're much more. English is much more. What you just say the, whether it's a feminine object or a masculine object. So yeah, French is
I love
always...
that basic lesson in grammar.
Yeah,
I think we all know that. It's called the definite article. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just spelling it out for anyone who needs it. But yeah, I mean, this is ridiculous. This is the bull leading the horse. Is that a phrase? I don't even know.
No,
probably
it's a phrase you've just made up.
It's a phrase I've just made up that should go in this dictionary and everybody else should have to use it.
What sex is the bull?
It's well, the
good
bull
question.
is actually
He's leading the horse.
Genderqueer, non-binary, pansexual bull. So
yeah, leading what sex horse?
It is ile or whatever.
It is ile, I think. That's a good question, though. But I think sometimes with the masculine and feminine stuff in France, they have been accused of this in the past because I think gentler, softer things are often given the feminine article, and then more gruff, butch things. I said that in a really camp way. But butch things are given the masculine article.
So it's Le Crunch, England versus France, of course, even though it does involve... No, it doesn't involve men. It can involve women as well.
Well, I don't know. But
rugby match. That's all. I'm talking about rugby now.
Well, I mean, you're talking to me about sports.
I know.
You're not
I know it's
a
not
winner
your
with
strong
that.
point.
Well, I don't even know what it is, really. So, what do you think there's a... See, what I'm interested about this is that language evolves, and we all get that language evolves, and the dictionary should be recording new usages. But what about this idea of then it just imposing something that hasn't really happened yet?
Yeah, it's up to the French, isn't it?
No, it is up to the French.
Sorry, I'm just going to be man in the street now. It's up to the French.
Well, I mean, it's actually not a bad point.
Who cares about the French?
But
well, I care deeply about the French.
Some of this stuff is forced on people. I remember in America, Hispanic voters have traditionally been a strong base for the Democrats, but then all these woke lefty Democrats said, because obviously Hispanic languages use the masculine and feminine as well, and they said, instead of saying Latina and Latino, you've got to call yourselves Latinx because that's a genderless description. And all the Hispanics were like, no, it won't, and we don't like that, so we're not going to vote for you anymore. And they came out in droves to vote for Trump and have completely upended the Democrats' strategy.
But he didn't, because he still lost.
Well, did he?
Yes, he did.
Come on, Leo. We're not going to start...
Leo!
We're not going to... No, listen. Leo peddles in conspiracy theories.
If you think I'm wrong about that, I want to hear the mail-in reactions to my comment.
Well, but
which will be available tomorrow.
On
Paul,
GBNews
come in.
Will be good. I mean, obviously...
Not true. We don't I'm not interested in conspiracy theories. Of course he lost the election, Leo. Anyway, the point of this, though, is this idea of the imposition of language. And I just think it's a fascinating question, because we had it...
But I don't think you can. I think people will decide what they're going to say, and it's up to them. As much as outrage, you can be outraged by people sticking stuff in a book, doesn't mean anyone's going to follow it.
But this is a very good question, because, for instance, do you remember a couple of years ago, Merriam-Webster Dictionary decided that youthquake was the word of the year, right? No one had ever used it, apart from a couple of journalists at The Guardian, and these dictionary people, and no one has used it ever since. So, I mean, the word of the year?
Yeah.
I think it is this thing of the people in power sort of saying, this is how we think
we could even prove it by making up a word and trying to spread it to GB viewers, GB News viewers, and saying that Sharky is my word of the week. So
what does it mean?
Well, I don't know. Let's decide. What do you want it to mean?
Maybe it's the perspiration that you get at the back of your neck when you're in a difficult conversation with your aunt about spinach.
There you go.
OK.
So everyone start using the word Sharky and see how successful that's going to be.
It's an interesting experiment. Let's go for another question. This is from Sarah. Where is Sarah?
Hi there.
Hi, Sarah.
Should people stop dressing up as Tupac?
Should people start dressing up as Tupac? Stop dressing up as Tupac.
I think they should, especially when they made themselves much darker than Tupac was. Which is one of the main things I've got to hold against Alex Hales. Tupac is a light-skinned black man, and he looked like a lump of coal.
So Paul, your issue is the accuracy of the costume.
If you're going to do it, blackface is bad enough, but then if you're going to go way over the top and get it wrong, then you've got just double the amount of anger in me for the stupidity of the person who's done the thing.
I can't believe so many people keep getting these old photos of them doing blackface. I thought, was this ever a thing? I don't know if people...
It also annoys me when people do Michael Jackson and black up, and you're thinking of all the people. Jesus, come on! Yes, it's offensive, but it's also wrong. That also offends me.
I'm just surprised. I mean, when you see like Justin Trudeau, who, by the way, did commit to it,
Yeah.
because I mean, he blacked up his legs as well. There were rips in his trousers. He went to town, and it's like, but he sort of got away with it because why? Because his politics were right. Why did he get voted in after doing that? And he did say, by the way, when they asked him how many times have you done this, he said, I don't know. he said, I don't know how many photos and videos there are of me out there in black. Why is this a thing all of a sudden? I find this very strange.
It's like every single party he went to, he did that. I love that you're upset that you know, the guy couldn't get the right colour of boot polish, and I think we need to petition Robert Dias.
What do you mean boot polish? You're so... They did it. I'm so shocked that I even came here tonight and there was no makeup on offer. I was expecting to look good for a week after this.
You should have your own... I bring my own makeup.
Obviously you do.
Yeah, I know. Thank you very much, Paul. And apply it myself, obviously, because it's very uneven. Anyway, because this is a minefield, we're going to carry on. We're going to carry on to the third question. We've got a question from Ben.
Oh, wait a minute. There's an added... Oh, God, I just suddenly realised a bit about Kevin.
Kevin?
Well, because the Azim Afiq... one of the things that got me about the whole story about this, about what happened to him, was that it's middle-class racism, and everyone's so shocked that it seems to exist. Football, yeah, we're happy with that. Yeah, we expect a bit of racism.
Oh, I see.
But now we've got cricket, middle-class racism, going, oh, it's so shocking.
Yeah.
No, it isn't.
I'm not sure.
It's not shocking at all.
I'm not sure that Yorkshire cricket is so middle class.
Oh, even in Yorkshire.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Well, you know, I mean, coming from there, so you
It's
say
middle class. It's not. No, you're not bowling with lumps of coal. They're using the cricket ball. It costs money. Yeah, it's a middle class game. Just because they have an accent doesn't. Oh, you should know this as a Scotsman. Accents don't mean. That's the whole thing about the North. It's harder to define class because everyone's got an accent.
Right.
And so therefore.
Yes, right. There's an assumption anyone with a northern accent must be poor.
Yeah.
It's really unfair.
Yeah.
Or anyone with a Scottish accent must be, you know. I better stop what I'm going to say. I could have said all sorts of things, get myself in a lot of trouble.
He's from Dumfriesshire, it doesn't
Are you
really
from
count.
quite a posh area of Scotland?
Not really, no. In fact, I think it's got more... I think it's one of the most poverty-stricken... Because it's very rural.
Oh, okay.
So everybody's just, you know, works on farms and
Yeah,
stuff.
but were you like the feudal lord, you know, in charge of all the others?
No. Well, my parents are actually English. Like, what I was in the 70s, my parents sold their house in Notting Hill for about £20,000. Because they did
That
not
was a
want...
good choice.
Yeah, they didn't want me to become a millionaire. And yeah, they moved to Scotland because for £20,000 in the 70s you could buy Scotland.
Well, listen, let's move on. We've got Ben somewhere. Where's Ben? Hello, Ben. How are you?
I'm good.
Let's have your question, Ben.
So, can white people suffer racism too?
There's a...
straight in there. Paul, straight in.
Did you see what happened? He was going to say something racist because I'm Scottish, and he stopped because he knew it was racist.
Well, before we get into it, clearly this is a contentious... Before we get into it, I just want to explain...
I'm going to answer this man's question.
Yeah, I know.
That's what I'm going to do.
Let me explain, Paul, before you do that, what the story is. So you're referring here, because Cambridge's Downing College this week was forced to rewrite an anti-discrimination guidance over concerns it would lead to a culture of fear which was racist to white people. So effectively they'd said it was impossible to be racist to white people, and then people pointed out, well, actually, people can be quite racist to Polish people, say, Irish people. You know, there used to be signs up, didn't there? No Irish, no dogs on so it's clearly possible, and now they've rewritten it. But what do we think about this? So you clearly want to answer, Paul, so come straight in.
There's a definition of racism, which I'm happy to tell to this 99% white audience. No, 98, I just spotted you. Which, of course, racism is... you can be prejudiced. Anyone can be prejudiced, right? All of us can be prejudiced. But racism is denoted by power. So if you've got power over another racial group, that makes it racist. So there you go.
Well, but that's not quite right, because so that definition is the current definition within postmodern circles, which is that racism is an equation, prejudice plus power. Traditionally, though, the typical definition is that racism is hatred or prejudice towards someone on the basis of skin colour. And I think that's a satisfactory definition. You don't agree with that?
Well, no, I disagree with that.
Fair enough.
You might find it satisfactory in your house, but in my house it is.
Well, I mean, it's not my house, it's the way
where do you live
received.
Then? You
I'm not
live in
giving out my address to these people. But what do you think, then?
Well, if we talk about people with power, Obama was president, so, I mean, he had power.
Yeah,
I mean,
one
he had
black person with power
No,
is
the
gonna...
president.
Well, my God, Obama. God, how many people do I know who are Obama?
But I think this is... But
none.
I think this is a serious question, is that people are using different definitions of the word, and that's why there are so many debates and arguments about it. And maybe... You know, and I think maybe there's a case for...
Let me put it this way. Can I just cut across here? One of the things about the Assam Afiq story, was anyone here really surprised by it?
What, are you, as in by the experiences that you had?
That there was racism going on. Was anyone really surprised by it? Is anyone going, well, that's a complete and utter surprise to me? No, no one's surprised. And as much as we might get into the wheres and definitions and all the ins and outs of it, when it comes down to the daily practical living your life thing, it's there. And you all know it is. I all know it is. But the rest of it is a bit like fanning round. I've got to watch my language.
Yeah, I think that's okay. I think we can get away with it. Yeah. But I think there's a point to be had there, which is quite reassuring in a way, is that when that was reported, and when you get these kind of stories where there's been racism, the condemnation is unanimous. No one's standing up and saying, oh well, he should have received that. Actually, that's quite a positive thing about that, I think.
Unless it's anti-Semitism, which seems to be absolutely acceptable for woke people.
So the anti-Semitism question is interesting. I know we're returning to this story, but I think this is an important one. And I go back to what Paul said earlier, because I think Paul was right that you can't just say that because he'd sent out these anti-Semitic tweets, that what he'd experienced was therefore right. I mean, it doesn't really make any sense. But there have been examples, haven't there, where anti-Semitism is kind of brushed over or just ignored. You don't get the universal condemnation potentially, or am I wrong about that?
No, I think that's absolutely true, and I think it comes down to the assumption that, which is anti-Semitic in itself, that Jews are powerful and they run things, and Israel's immensely powerful and horrible to all the countries round about it.
But as the only part Jewish person on the panel, I've got the aces of all the races. I've covered a lot. I've got slavery and genocide, all in one person. You know how many cards I've got to play? I've got a whole pack in it. So,
well, I'll tell you what, the gay thing doesn't help anymore. The gay thing used to be helpful to me, and now, no, it's not really.
Well,
when we're doing the hierarchy thing,
I'll be talking to Pete about this after.
Yeah, do. You just add that, Paul, to your roster, and you'd be grand.
Me and Peter Tatchell doing a double act.
Goodness me, where is this going? Well, I mean, I think it's an interesting point. I'd like to just come back to that point, though, about what Paul was saying about the class issue, because that's another interesting point, isn't it? I find a lot of when we talk about identity politics, and we often forget about class, actually, as not just being an identity, but also there is a very pragmatic element to it, which is that if you don't have money, you don't have opportunities. Sometimes I worry that is kind of overlooked within all of these debates. It's perfectly possible to have an intersectional look at the world and think, we're going to think in terms of gender, sexuality, race, and class. But so many intersectional activists, they do elide that latter category. They ignore it, and they pretend it's not really an issue. And that's why when we talk of privilege, but we forget that people on the poverty line aren't privileged. Is this a worry that you have, or is it just me?
No, I think it's very obvious, and I think everybody knows that class and wealth are really the two big identifiers of privilege, the two deciders of privilege. And I think some of the race stuff is almost flipped. So my ex-girlfriend, she's Afghan Indian, and she actually updated her LinkedIn profile with a more, in her words, a more ethnic-looking picture to take advantage of the fact that everybody wants to hire, ethnic people because it's 2021.
Did you talk to her as to her reasons for that? Did you have a conversation about why she did that?
Yeah, she said she knows, the field she works in. She knows she's going to get more job offers as people try and be more inclusive.
It's taken me 20 years to get onto this show.
To be fair, though,
it's as good as it gets for me. And you're saying if I just blacked myself up a bit like some cricketer's version of Tupac, I would have been on here several months earlier.
Instead of cricketer's, you're like a cricketer's version of Rick James at the moment.
To be fair, Paul,
very niche. Not enough funk fans in the room.
I had no idea what he was talking about.
I know what he's talking about.
To be fair, Paul, this channel's only been going a few months, so I don't think you can blame us for that. But you mean television generally?
Yes, of course. I mean, obviously, I just need to be. I need to ethnic myself up a bit more because obviously I'm doing it wrong.
I think that would be.
Thank you for the advice.
I think that would be a very recent development. I think people accept that there has been extreme racial prejudice in this country for a number of of years. And you know, if what you're describing is real, I'm not denying your ex-girlfriend's lived experience, by the way, but that must be a recent development. That must be over the past year or so, at the very least. Is that wrong?
Yeah, past couple of years, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, okay. But I do think it's very interesting that I was talking to Peter Tatchell and Debbie Hayton earlier about definitions, and I think this is really key in all of these, you know, whatever we want to call it, culture war discussions, is that we forget that people are using completely different definitions. So when it comes to the trans debate, and when we talk about what is a woman and what is a man, and half of us are talking about biological sex and the other half are talking about gender identity. So of course no one's making any progress. We get exactly the same here when we're talking about, for most people, racism means hatred or prejudice, and for a lot of people it's also to do with power structures. So, you know, if we could somehow, not necessarily all agree on what the definitions ought to be, but at least agree that we are using different definitions, and then maybe we might be able to get some sort of progress. I'm sorry, I've gone in a bit of a rant here, but I tell you what, I do sort of feel quite strongly about it, and I think that's actually quite important. And I'm also really keen that we get some dialogue going and we get some discussion without just finger-pointing and mudslinging, and that's hopefully what this show is contributing to. But anyway, that's my hope. It might be self-aggrandising, but there it is. Anyway, we're going to go for a break now. Please do come back with us in a couple of minutes, and we're going to be getting into pantomime, because that is the season. See you in a minute.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back. Well, Panto season is well and truly upon us. Oh, yes, it is. But more importantly, has anyone seen our next guests? This is what they look like.
Oh, it's lovely to see you. Oh, look at this one. He spent all morning doing his hair and he's left it at home.
Oh, what a shame, sir. Don't worry about it. Oh, they're nice, aren't they?
Oh, they are, aren't they? Marvellous. Yes, a bunch of TikTokers we got here.
Yeah.
Boys and girls. Lovely.
Oh, I suppose we can...
Hello. Hello.
Oh, hello.
Welcome, everyone. Please welcome my guests, our Dame Luke Coldham and Buttons John Oakes. This is very surreal for me. I'm going to ask you to break character so that I can talk about your work in pantomime. If that's
all right.
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me, serious actors.
Of course you're serious actors, but so many serious actors do go into pantomime. It's actually something that a lot of, well, all actors ultimately want to do it at some point. It's quite an important thing.
Yeah, I mean, it requires every form of stagecraft there is going.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to not only just break the fourth wall and talk to the audience, but you've also got to improvise, and you've got to use every bone in your body when you're performing. It's a completely different world than maybe if you're doing Shakespeare or Chekhov or something. You know, it's.
And have you done, John? Have you done Shakespeare as well as panto? Have you gone from one to the other? In that?
Yeah, I'm actually quite a big fan of performing Shakespeare. It's one of my favourite types of performance. I really, really love it. And a lot of sort of what Shakespeare did in the styles of the characters he wrote sort of mirrored nowadays in a lot of performance.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I wanted to get you on, of course, is we've had a story this week, and this is Cambridge University Theatre. And production bosses decided that they wanted to pre-warn their audience about harmful and offensive content this Christmas. This is something I actually spoke to Christopher Biggins about this, and he when he was on the show, he was sort of saying, you know, the day they go after the dame, I'm going to freak out. I'm going to go out with a machine gun and you know, take people out. And, you know, he was really kind of exercised about this. Do you think there is a worry about this idea, Luke, about adding warnings to a panto, which we all know what to expect from panto, don't we?
Yeah, I think we do, and I think ever since, you know, we were all children, we have even, you know, memories of going to the theatre with our families every Christmas, going to see a pantomime, and it is just completely innocent fun in a safe environment, and that's the thing with it, you know. It's completely magical, and the idea is bringing a fairy tale to life.
What are the things that people are offended about potentially in a panto?
I'm not too sure, but possibly the gender swapping of maybe, you know, myself being a man playing what is essentially a female clown, I describe it as, because it's a very fine line between drag and panto dame.
It is a different thing, though, isn't it?
It is. It really is. And as we know, I mean, the drag scene is absolutely massive at the moment with things like RuPaul's Drag Race and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't, you know, you're not going to do a double take thinking, am I an actual woman?
I don't know. I think the hair is pretty convincing, actually. I think that's quite nice. I mean, go on, sorry, carry on.
I was going to say, which is a lovely introduction for children to feel a bit more, I don't know, a bit more safer in that environment.
Well, so Christopher Biggins was talking to me about this idea of, you know, that actually they don't often these days have the lead male role played by a girl. Is that right? That's sort of something that's changed as well. But actually, I think that's quite interesting.
Yeah, I miss that. Because that was obviously done back in the day, and this was during the Victorian period, you know, so we're talking about 150 years ago, where the principal boy was played by, you know, an actress. All because, you know, ladies can actually show their ankles.
Yes,
Heaven forbid.
That's shocking.
I know, or an ankle. And it kind of died down, I think, in the 70s and the 80s.
Yeah.
And we don't see it so often, but I would like to see more, you know, actresses playing the lead male. It would be quite fun.
It would be. Do you think there's anything potentially offensive about panto? Isn't part of panto the double entendre? Isn't part of the humour aimed above the kids' heads at the parents?
I would absolutely agree. I think a lot of what panto does is plays for everybody, but has little snippets of jokes for various members of the audience. So,
exactly.
Yeah, there's some fantastic jokes, particularly in the panto we do, that are exactly like you say, aimed at the adults. It's definitely for the adults, but they're completely child-friendly, and everybody in the audience enjoys the joke.
Yes.
But you can get it on very many different levels. Yeah.
There's something quite reassuring, isn't there, about panto, because it does adhere to the conventions so closely. I mean, the very fact that you're here, there's a dame, there's a Buttons. There's always going to be a dame and a Buttons, aren't there? What is Buttons' role typically?
Buttons works at Hard Up Hall. And it's about as specific as that.
Okay.
So Buttons is seen as the friend to Cinderella, so the male sort of counterpart to Cinderella, who never gets the girl.
Yeah.
Oh, it's sadder than that, everybody. That's the beautiful thing about
They know it. They know it.
Is an audience. We expect a particular thing.
I love that about Panto. You can call for more. Like as a comedian, I can't say more laughter, please. Come on.
I'll tell you what, it was hilarious because I had a friend from Sweden who came to stay with me a couple of years ago. And she came to watch the Panto, and she sat there in the audience, all ready to go, and it's behind you, and then as you say, oh, yes, it is, oh, no, it is, and she was like, how did you all know what to say? It came out of nowhere, because it's such a British thing, isn't it,
Yeah,
really?
that's right. But people do still remember those conventions. You're not getting a sense that people are losing it or don't know what to do. They know where they have to join in as a song. There's always a song, isn't there, that they have to join in on. There's usually a messy kind of scene.
A slosh scene.
Slosh scene.
Yeah, something like a slosh routine, which often happens.
Yeah, well, I have 10 seconds to redo my makeup.
What happens in the slosh scene in your Panto?
Oh, well, we have a boudoir scene. So, because we're doing Cinderella at the moment, so we've got the two ugly sisters. So me and the other actor, and we're in the boudoir scene, and we're doing each other's makeup, which goes terribly wrong until we both look like a Picasso, and then we have 10 seconds to go off and redo our makeup for the next scene.
I see. So that's how it works. What other conventions are there? I suppose there is the interaction. I find with audience interaction, from a stand-up perspective, some people just freeze and they absolutely don't want to be involved. And as soon as you talk to them, they know. Right? But in Panto, people go along sort of wanting it, don't they?
Yes, I think you feel in a much more comfortable position as a member of the audience in a pantomime because you're not going to get picked on. Everybody is there to have the same fun together. You all know the things that you're supposed to do and the things that you're supposed to say. The only real change is often the dame will pick a person in the audience that they reference throughout the rest of the show and talk to personally.
Yeah.
And that's really the only moment where, as an audience member, you can feel a little on your own.
Have you ever had situations where the audience response has not been what you wanted, say, or was it unpredictable?
Yeah, I think occasionally, because I'll always either pick on, you're going to be my boyfriend for the show or whatever.
Right.
You may, it doesn't often happen often, but you may pick on a chap who is completely... I don't know why on earth he's picked the front row as a ticket if he's not going to be up for it.
Look terrified,
Always confuses me. Why did you book at the front row? You know you're going to be picked on. And they're not playing ball. And if I know after a few lines of dialogue they're not going to play ball, I'll pick on someone else because there's no point dragging them through the mud when they obviously don't want to play.
So just tell us, where is your production on?
So we're doing Cinderella at the Thameside Theatre in Grays in Thurrock. And it runs from... When's it running from?
The
3rd of December through to the 9th of January.
Perfect.
And is it the case that... Because obviously there are basically 3 or 4 stories you can do in Panto, isn't there? There's Puss in Boots, there's Cinderella, there's Mother Goose, there's Jack and the Beanstalk. I think that's probably it, isn't it?
Well,
I think...
Aladdin...
Aladdin, OK.
There we go. We've got shout-outs from the audience.
This actually isn't an audience participation show. Let's not confuse the format.
So what you're saying is there's quite limited types of stories that get told, and they get told sort of year on year in various different ways, and in new and exciting style.
Well, how do you make it new? So how do you make it fresh?
So, for example, your character this year, the two ugly sisters, are Anna and Elsa, which is, of course, a very modern reference. The beauty of Panto is choosing things that are specific to the place you're in. So, for example, we are in Grays.
Yes.
And playing and using jokes and poking fun at things that are specific to that area and specific to that particular time.
It's making it relatable for the local audiences. And we all have our own regional and local theatres that we go to every year. And it's just... I don't know what it is about it, but when you poke fun, I don't know, a new shop that's opened up, there's something happened in that shop or something, and you can relate to it, it just becomes more funnier because, you've experienced it yourself.
Yes. And is this the first Panto you've done, or are you sort of veterans at this at the moment?
Well, we've worked together for 5 years as Comic and Dame, haven't we?
Yes.
And that's,
in Grays,
well, in Grays and in Basildon as well. So I mean, John's from Southend and I'm from Basildon.
Yes.
So we've luckily been able to work quite locally, and I've done Panto before all over the country. So I've been doing Daming for about 10 years.
Yes.
And Ugly Sisters as well in between, and I enjoy them both equally. I've been very fortunate because sometimes you get an ugly pair where the two actors don't get along and they're fighting for the spotlight, and you can sometimes see that through the actors' eyes. That they're not in character. They're actually the actors.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, to what extent is it? Because obviously we watch a panto and we think this is so much fun, and the actors are obviously having fun with it because you can be quite slippy with the script. I notice sometimes people go off script quite a lot, or maybe that's just planned and we're meant to think you're going off script.
Yes.
But is there that? Are there those problems? Are there those backstage issues going on? Temperaments flaring, people not getting on necessarily? What is it?
Often panto runs are quite long, so you do a lot of shows over quite an intense period of, Christmas can be quite intense for lots of people, lots going on. So because you're doing all those shows and the repetition of that, sometimes it can get, a little tiring for people.
And surely you must get some divas in there, because you often get celebrities...
Please don't call Luke a diva.
But you know what I mean, because you end up with celebrities who are not actors.
Yes.
Often in panto, you'll get like back in the 80s and 90s, you had a gladiator would turn up like Jet or something like that. Or you get... I saw a panto with Neil and Christine Hamilton in that role.
I'm sorry.
So you just sort of think, well, sometimes you can get politicians, you can get anything sort of turning up, and surely that's a different vibe from a normal production where you're used to working with other thespians.
Yeah, and you have to play on who you've got. So
Right.
if you've got someone, for example, I don't know, from Love Island, then you're. There are only a few reasons why why you've got them on stage with you. So you kind of you prod a little bit of fun at that with them, and then of course they're up for ridicule.
Well, you wouldn't be in a panto otherwise, would you?
Exactly. You've got to be able to have thick skin and to be laughed at.
Yes, exactly. And it's a festive thing, isn't it? And presumably it's musical. Do you have songs in your show?
We do. We sing and we dance.
Yeah, you've got it all. You're a triple threat.
To varying degrees. Yes. So yeah, I'm primarily a comic. So a lot of what I do, I'm very fortunate because I do a bit of stand-up comedy as well, and it's fairly similar style of role. So I get a lot of audience interaction. I get to talk to them. I get to have fun with them. But yeah, of course, there is singing, there is dancing, there are, chorus who come on and do all the songs and dances and stuff with us.
But how much licence do you have to go off the script? Do the writers get annoyed? Do the directors get annoyed? Or can you just... Is it... Because it feels like a chaotic free-for-all, but that's part of the charm, right?
It can be. I mean, there are certain... It depends on how many people are on stage. If there are too many people on stage, then I think it's a bit irresponsible to go off the script, because then you're putting too many people in the firing line.
Right.
Whereas if it's, for example, just me and John on the stage, someone might say something in the audience, might get a heckler, and of course you've got... Because it's live theatre, and the 4/4 was completely broken, so of course I'm going to come out and have a conversation with you. Go, what did you say? What was that? And we'll play on that, and we'll just have to be quick on the ball with something witty or something, with that. But
it's one of the few genres where the hecklers are kind of inevitable.
Well, they're part of the show.
Well, you don't get it at Ibsen.
A Doll's House. Hang on, what was that?
Yeah, exactly. Well, just remind us before you go where it is again. So it's Cinderella.
Yeah.
At the Grays.
At the Thameside Theatre in Grays in Essex.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Still to come on Free Speech Nation, we're going to be taking a look at the stories that have created a storm on social media. And I'll be giving my verdict on our audience members' unfiltered dilemmas with the help of my beautiful panel. See you in a moment.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. So every week we dedicate this part of the show to the world of social media, and we want to look at some of the clips that have been going viral. Our first clip this week is from Thursday's episode of Question Time, where there was this rather awkward situation unfolding during a question about Azim Rafiq. Have a look at this.
I mean, I've just seen it the once. He doesn't look... It's hard to tell if this person was joking or not.
Yes, it is.
It's also hard to tell if Fiona Bruce is joking or not.
I don't think she ever does she? I don't think... She's a very serious woman. But then and immediately just to go to the white guy, to go to Jordan Peterson, it was just a misjudged thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think he started off making a joke with perhaps a sort of semi-serious thing in it, but then because of the way she responded, he had to... She didn't give him a chance to sort of laugh it off and then continue, so then he had to continue with, you know, yes.
I think that's probably right. So sometimes people are just so deadpan. You know what that's like. When it's so deadpan, you go with it, and then, of course, you have to double down at that point, don't you? Just an awkward, awful situation overall. But anyway, let's have a look at something a bit more fun and light and festive. This is an advert from Tesco. Christmas adverts always cause such controversy. I don't know why that is, but this is one about Santa talking about vaccinations. Let's get a look at this.
Breaking news. Santa could be quarantined.
Next.
Don't tell me, don't tell me. Oi! Get off! Don't tell me, don't tell me.
OK, so this has caused a lot of trouble because basically Santa has shown proof of his vaccination status, and lots of people online... Now, look, you might be sensible enough to not be online, but if you are on social media, then you will see that people have been very angry about this. Paul, do you think they have a right to be angry about it? Do you think they're just overblowing, getting outraged about nothing, basically?
With all the things about the anti-vaxxers, the only argument I sort of accept is when people say, it's my body and I have a choice what I put in it. That's the only argument I can go, well, fair enough.
That's the liberal argument. You should be able to choose what you do.
I think, OK, I will go with that argument because it's a very basic one I can understand. The other excuses are just excuses, or some of them are just lunacy, but that's just my point of view.
Yeah.
So, if you're going to get upset about someone who doesn't exist in an ad for a shop that you probably don't go in...
Yeah.
Showing that he's been vaccinated. Yes, you want to get upset about the fictional character, Santa Claus, being vaccinated, and I think even triple vaxxed. I think he might even have the booster.
Well, he always does things to excess, doesn't he?
He does indeed.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, well, OK, why not?
Well, look, I think everyone should be entitled to get upset about whatever they want to get upset about and to make a noise if they want to make a noise. But, I mean, it does seem... I couldn't be bothered. I couldn't be bothered, to be honest.
Well, yeah, because the advert wasn't saying, oh, COVID passports are great and we should make them mandatory. It was just stating the fact that you do actually need a COVID passport to travel between a lot of countries. So it was just a little joke at the expense, and then everybody, lost their minds on Twitter and was saying boycott Tesco. Yeah, there's a lack of sensibleness, if that's a word. If it's not,
I just think there's a bigger thing you're missing here, that Santa Claus has been bringing illegal immigrants into this country for years. And you seem to be just glossing this over. It's not just the reindeer he brings in.
He goes home again. Is it not more disturbing that he breaks into people's houses and drinks all the sherry? I mean, that to me is just, he's a dipsomaniac and a lunatic. It's not good. Let's try another. Have we got time for another video? Yes. OK, let's have a look at this one. This one is from TikTok this week. I'm not on TikTok. I have no idea really how it works, but users film themselves grabbing free money off the interstate motorway in Carlsbad in the US after the doors of an armoured truck transporting the cash flew over. This sounds like a movie. Let's have a look what it looks like.
This is the most insane thing I've ever seen. Someone dropped money all over the freeway. San Diego has shut down. Literally, it has shut down. Look at the freeway right now. Oh my gosh.
This is insane. I mean, this reminds me of that scene in Batman, isn't it, where the Joker drops all that money over Gotham City and everyone goes wild and crazy. I mean, I can see why that went viral. I mean, it's quite a statement on human greed and avarice. Why can't people just be calm and get in an orderly queue and take a few... Look at that. I mean, that guy's absolutely crazy. I mean,
But this
and the police have asked them to hand it back.
Oh,
But no,
police
so-
have asked them
no,
to
this-
hand it in. This
yeah.
is like one of those knife amnesties where, yeah, I'm sure all the crime gangs in London are going to hand in all their knives. Now, this is, I mean, what they're showing here is basically just government policy for the last, 10 years. Since quantitative easing started, governments have acted like Zimbabwean finance ministers and just printed money hand over fist. It's great to see them now just throwing it onto the motorway instead of having it distributed to banks.
I think sometimes you do the weirdest answers. You really, I mean,
What I love is that-
it is people picking money off just quantitative easing. My God, what's the matter with you?
Quantitative
Free
easing.
money!
Quantitative
Free
easing.
money!
The thing is, there's no such thing as free money because any money that's created devalues the money that's already in circulation.
I don't know. I quite like this idea of just throwing money on the street and seeing, the toughest people are the richest, don't they?
When did Leo become the Chancellor of the Exchequer?
Well, you didn't know about that.
I
But
don't know.
it was
Suddenly, all of a sudden, he's talking about prudence.
It was during the lockdown. It was quite the development. Wow. I think it's quite interesting the way that people just go absolutely crazy. I mean, there's no dignity to that, is there? I mean, also this idea of asking people to hand it back. If you found I don't know, a £10 note on the street and you took it, and then someone said, well, the right thing to do is to take that to the police station and say, I found this on the.
Yeah.
Do you think you'd do that?
No, I'd take a fiver there if I was going to be that honest. I wouldn't take the 20. I'd say, well,
what about you?
I'll keep 50
I
and
mean,
take 5.
Yeah, as if somebody's going to go to a police station and say, I lost a £20 note, as anybody handed it in. You know, I mean, that'd be the... You don't want to add a wasted bus trip to your misery of,
That's a good point, because I'm suddenly thinking none of us, if we've lost money, has ever gone to the police station.
No, that's true.
So has anyone handed any money in? But there might be some people who do. So perhaps every day we should go past the police station. And just go,
On the off chance.
Anyone handed any money in?
Yeah.
Because we could be making... it could be a new job for us all.
I think that's a great idea, but not one that I will advise viewers to take up, because that's probably theft and illegal. Anyway, but maybe we'll do that. But anyway, we need to move on, because we need to talk about some of your unfiltered dilemmas. So this is the part of the show where, for some reason, people tell us what their problems are, and we attempt to do something about it. So we start here. We got one from Joe. Joe emailed gbviews@gbnews to say, I reckon I could win an Olympic medal for throwing if I changed my gender. Should I do it? Well, I mean, that's quite a contentious dilemma there. I think we'll go to... Well, since you wrote a show about gender identity, didn't you, Leo? So you'll know about this.
I mean, I think, women's sports is becoming a retirement community for mediocre male athletes. A lot of whom are facing the same dilemma that Joe's facing. And yeah, why not? I mean, if the system's set up, at the moment, you don't even have to reduce... The IOC's brought through this rule, you don't have to reduce your testosterone levels. So Joe could go in there totally ripped. And just destroy...
But I think, well, look, we had a very nuanced debate about this earlier with Peter Tatchell and Debbie Hayes, and you come charging in here with your sledgehammer tactic. OK, what do you think, Paul? Do you think he should...
We should do... what sort of throwing events?
Oh, he didn't actually say what he wanted.
Just a bit unspecific.
Some kind of... He could win an Olympic medal for throwing.
Put. Yeah, throwing what? Throwing up? Well, who knows?
This is a very good point. Can I just ask, if people are going to send in their problems, be more specific?
Yeah. So in terms of he wants to... there is a world record for throwing up distance.
I mean,
there might be.
I think there probably is in Sheffield or somewhere like that.
Yeah, there is. And I think, yes, definitely go and do it.
Yeah, why not? Yeah. Well, let's try another one here. So this is a... oh, no, we actually don't have time, I'm being told, which is a shame, because the next one was a very, very good idea. But anyway, we're going to have to end. Thank you so much for joining me for Free Speech Nation this week. I've just read that on the auto cue. Someone has a crush on one of our panellists, by the way, so we were going to try and resolve that.
Always him.
It's bound... No, maybe it's me. Anyway, thank you for joining us. This was the week when schools joined in the attacks on J.K. Rowling, when the cricket world was rocked by allegations of racism, and Robert Dias proved that you absolutely don't need a budget to have a successful Christmas ad. I think they've done a fantastic job then. And every year that ad comes up and recirculates, and I would urge you to retweet it because it's really good. Thank you to my panel, Leo Kurz and Paul Ricketts. To my guests, Peter Tatchell, Debbie Hayden, Luke Coldham and John Oakes, better known as Buttons and the Dame. Now, you can apply to be a part of this audience, and the details of how you do that are at the bottom of the screen right now. All you need to do is go to sroaudiences.com. Please do join us here. We always have a great time. And if you want to hear more from Tom Slater, you can on Free Speech Nation, the podcast, which is live now. Thanks so much for watching. I've been Andrew Doyle. Good night.
Remind ourselves, there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead now to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking fine and sunny for most, but skies will be cloudy in northern Scotland. Let's take a look at the details. It'll be a frosty start in southwest England with a few mist and fog patches. The rest of the day will be sunny and chilly, with a high of around 9 degrees Celsius for most. It should be a bright start for most in the southeast too. It'll feel chilly, but most places should be frost-free to start the day. Rather cold over Wales, with some places starting the day below freezing, so you might want to wrap up warm. It'll also be quite a crisp start to the day in northwest England, with a frost for most, but also plenty of sunshine. Any mist or fog patches should quickly clear away. Temperatures should generally be above freezing across the northeast on Monday morning, but it will still feel quite chilly. You could catch the odd shower first thing near the coast. There's going to be a biting chill across parts of southern Scotland in the morning, as temperatures could be as low as -5 degrees Celsius. You may have to scrape your car if you're heading out early in the morning. Also, a rather cold start in Northern Ireland with plenty of sunshine and a crisp frost to start the day. The sunny, dry and chilly weather will continue on Monday, with just a few showers in the east. And that's how the weather's shaping up during tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
On Mark Dolan tonight, 40 years after he got the top job, was Ronald Reagan the best president in 100 years? We'll debate that with Sarah Elliott, top US commentator. The Queen of 90s TV, Sue Cook, star of Crime Watch and Children in Need with Terry Wogan, is my Mark Meets guest.